And welcome. It's 1 o'clock. Time for the live stream. Hey, we have a special guest, Paul Carlson.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about the National Association of Realtors Clear Cooperation Policy. There's been a lot of confusion about it, a lot of uncertainty about its scope, and we're going to try to clear some of that up today because some multiple listing systems have different interpretations. So we're going to try to clarify it based on what NAR's interpretation is, the Michigan Realtors interpretation is, and the fire truck coming down the street any moment. So live streaming. Okay. And some of the multiple listing interpretations. So I'm going to first of all read the actual section 1.01 of the NAR policy, which says clear cooperation. Within 1 business day of marketing a property to the public, the listing broker must submit the listing to the multiple listing system for cooperation with other MLS participants. Public marketing includes but is not limited to flyers displayed in windows, yard signs, digital marketing on public-facing websites like Facebook, for example, brokerage websites, digital communications, marketing, email blasts, multi-broker, listing sharing networks and applications available to the general public. Okay, which is to say pretty much everything.
Pretty much.
Pretty much. If you go on and you say, this is coming soon, it falls under it. And I'm going to ask Paul to explain why the phrase coming soon falls under it. But before I do that, I want to explain what 1 business day is. There's a lot of, I saw over the weekend, a lot of agents saying you have to put you have to list it within 24 hours. You can't put the sign in prior to 24 hours. No, it's 1 business day. You get 1 full business day after you have posted something on Facebook that you have to put the listing up on the MLS, to load it up on the MLS. So it's 1 business day in the wording of the actual NAR. But let's talk about specifically coming soon. And I want Paul to address this because Paul has looked into it everybody as much as I have, probably more. So
the phrase coming soon, part of our issue here, guys, is that the Facebook and all this social media and all this real-time communication has forced a lot of things to be dealt with. So the MLS made policies from years ago, and now they're going, whoa, how does this all work in a really fast-paced world? And a world where you have no inventory. So when you use the word coming soon, the way they're defining that now is that as an actual, what's the word I'm looking for? It's an actual category or an actual definition that means essentially that property is known to be coming available for consideration. What that means is, in layman's terms, is if you know that listing is going to hit the MLS in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, and you've had a conversation with your client, you know, like, hey, let's just see if we can float this thing out there, and then like in 3 weeks we'll list it. That is a coming soon property. That is not an off-market opportunity. That is very clearly what they're describing here. And let me make one more note on why this is so important, Don. I hope I don't run away with it here.
No,
I want to say one thing. This coming soon thing creates issues because let's say they didn't have this definition of I got myself confused here. Let's say that the MLS just let it go, and they don't really care what's going on here. Who's to stop a large brokerage in your marketplace to ask all of their realtors to coming soon all of their properties for the first 7 to 14 days before hitting the MLS? that means that you're going to, so you see what that issue that could form.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is exactly the reason for the clear cooperation policy. Is there were agents, brokerages, large brokerages, that were essentially holding back listings, not holding them back, but saying coming soon and waiting to go out and get the listing, knowing full well that they were going to be getting the listing. There was the intent of getting the listing, and intent is a major factor in all of this. And so the NAR perceived it as basically gaming the system.
It breaks down broker reciprocity.
Exactly. So there is the ability to exempt certain properties. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but it's important to know that when the term coming soon or pocket listing is used, it's going to raise a red flag, because pocket listing is basically somebody taking a real listing, getting a signature, and then stuffing it in their pockets and not loading it onto the MLS. NAR has essentially categorized the phrase coming soon as exactly that same thing. Would you agree?
Yeah, in the old days it was pocket listing. There was no coming soon, which was called pocket listings.
Yeah.
Hey, I got a pocket listing over on Gull Lake. I've got a pocket listing over here. That was what we used. That was before they were really cracking down on it.
Right.
But coming soon has kind of replaced that, or means almost the same exact thing.
In reality, it has become sort of a replacement of that. Now, I want to talk a little bit before we go on, because we're going to come back to the words in situations that are usable in this situation. But I wanted to talk a little bit about exempt properties. For example, Section 1.3 goes on to say that you can exempt a property if the seller refuses to permit the listing to be disseminated by the service. The participant may then take the listing as an office exclusive, and such listing shall be filed with the service but not disseminated to the participants of the MLS. Filing of the listing should be accompanied by a certification by the seller that the seller does not desire the listing to be disseminated by the service. In other words, seller requests this property not be broadcast on the multiple listing service. Now, obviously, that's going to reduce the exposure of that property, and the question that an agent and broker is going to be challenged with is that really operating in the best interests of the seller. Nevertheless, it is an option. It also permits us to use the language in the listing contract and the broadcast on the MLS that a seller requests no showings until and will review offers no earlier than. That language may continue, as well as the delayed submission form. But again, you got to check with each of your MLSs, because I know that, for example, WMLAR does not allow the seller will not review offers before language. They see that as against the occupational code, and they require that all offers written must be presented to the seller at the earliest reasonable opportunity. So bear all of these things in mind when you are preparing your listing for the market.
Two things, Don. On the thing that you just said here about WMLAR not allowing those delayed presentation of offers, right?
Right.
That does not mean that your client or seller can on their own say, hey, I'm not going to reply until X day or time, regardless of what you or the MLS tells me. Absolutely.
A great point. Yes, absolutely. If you get 10 offers prior to the seller, the date the seller has indicated they will allow showings, that seller has every right to say, I'm going to wait.
Yeah.
I'm under no obligation whatsoever to accept any of them until I get around to it, until I feel like it. So,
Jamie Loney asked a question about can we share these coming soon or pocket listings or off market listings on a private page? And I think the real issue here, Jamie, is that if it's to anyone other, there's two differences here. If it's an office exclusive listing, which is what Don was just talking about, you could share that on 5 Stars page if your client had directed you to share an office exclusive listing. That is something you could only share with people who are in your brokerage. So if it was a private Facebook page that you had and you had anyone in there that was not a 5-star realtor, it would be a violation. You cannot share that listing with anyone from the public. It doesn't mean public advertising or branding. It basically means you really can't publicize that listing at all to anyone other than a 5-star realtor in that office exclusive scenario. And in the other scenario we just talked about, you can't, the connect page, yeah, I see you put the connect page here. If it's an office exclusive, Jamie, that's the only way. You aren't allowed to do anything coming soon before that 24-hour period. It does not matter which the scenario, other than it must be an office exclusive. Now, I don't know if you want to talk about this, Don, right now or not, but there is a difference between an off-market listing and a coming soon or a pocket listing.
I think that's perfect. It's a perfect opportunity to make those distinctions.
Okay.
So, and I know that you have talked about off-market listings, so I'm going to let you take the.
Well, here's a great example of an off-market listing. I go knock on a door and it's a FSBO, right? I go knock on the door and I say to the FSBO, "Hey, I'd love to hold an open house for you." "Oh, really? You would?" "Yes, I'd love to do that. I'll take care of all the marketing. I'll put it on Facebook. I'll go door knocking. I'll let all your neighborhood know that we're going to have an open house here this coming Sunday." You know, and then the FSBO says, "Well, why would you do that?" And they go, "Well, I would love to see if I can find a buyer for your home. Maybe you'll be willing to pay me if I do that?" "Sure." "Okay." Now, in that scenario, you have no information on whether or not that person will be listing their property ever.
In fact, the likelihood seems that they're not.
Because they're putting themselves out there.
The intent of the for sale by owner is to sell it themselves.
Right. So in that scenario, Don, I go and I hold this open house. I'm putting it on social media. I'm doing live streams from it. I'm doing Facebook. I'm doing Instagram stories. I'm even paying $5 to get my Facebook ad to go out there. Hey, here's an off-market FSBO open house hosted by Paul Carlson of 5-Star Real Estate. That is an entirely legal way to advertise an off-market property.
Yep.
Because
it absolutely is.
Because it is not known to me that it will ever be coming available for consideration to the MLS.
That is the key word. The key element of this, remember, is what is the intent? What is the intent of the seller in selling their property? Is it to ultimately list it with you, or is it to continue to sell it themselves? That's where you have to draw the line, and it's a very fine line. So, I want to also address the issue of delay of submission. That is the form that some multiple listing systems will allow you to take a listing today, and it doesn't go live for 10 days after you get photos and staging, and you clean the bathroom and all of that stuff. Here in the Grand Rapids area, the Grand Rapids Association of Realtors, allows that. There are some multiple listings that do not allow that. During that period of time, if you have a delayed submission where the listing will not go live for, let's say, a week from today, there is no advertising allowed whatsoever. No yard sign, no Facebook post, no coming soon, no open house on Sunday, nothing, zero. Again, that differs greatly from a listing contract that says seller requests no showings prior to such and such a date, and will review offers only after such and such a date. Be careful of the word deadline. We've had several instances where agents have put in deadline for offers is. Well, that's not exactly correct, because it suggests that the seller won't review offers after that time. The deadline is such and such. When the intent of the language is that they will review offers, they will collect all offers up until that point and then present them. So the words are very important. And so we encourage you that if you get into a situation that you're unfamiliar with, that you're not sure of, you've got me, Eric, Paul, Tracy, Doug, Kim, all of us to reach out to, who are all on the same page on this, and we can help you a lot. So,
okay, one question and one thought for you. This says 1 business day. So does that mean if I were to advertise my listing on Friday that is coming soon, does that mean I have to list it on Monday?
In my interpretation, the answer is yes.
Okay.
If you perceive that Saturday and Sunday are not business days, as would be the common interpretation,
it's pretty normal, yeah.
Then I think if you were to say coming soon on Friday and load it up on Monday, you would be within the compliance of the clear cooperation policy.
Okay, good to know. And day 0 would be the day you advertise it, and then you day 1 is the next business day, and it has to be on the market by end of day that business day.
Right, but it's a full business day. It starts at 12:01 a.m. and it ends at or 12 midnight actually, and then it ends at 11:59 that same day. So, as we're talking about Monday, for example, it would start Sunday night at Monday 12 a.m. and go through to 11:59 on Monday p.m. So it's not by the hour, it's by the day.
Okay.
Okay? Where are we on time?
We are at 1:18.
1:18, cool.
We do have one more question here.
Okay.
Before you move on. Monique Hansen says, what if we say we have a listing coming up, but we only give the general vicinity and sort of the property amenities, things like this, square footages, things like that. I don't list the address or anything like that.
Again, as you pointed out, it goes to the intent. Is the intent to list the property, or is it always going to be a for sale by owner? The question is, according to this clear cooperation policy, it was created to do exactly what you described, which is to prohibit large brokers from saying coming soon with a block of properties, keeping them essentially off the market and selling them internally before they ever go live on the multiple listing. So if you have a property that you are aware of and you start saying a week earlier words different than coming soon, but the intent is the same, I think you're going to end up in the same problem. Would you agree?
I would say that it doesn't state specifically that it only counts if you put the address. It really says if you advertise the property. So if you're describing the property, if you're saying, hey, I've got this thing coming up next week sometime, and you're giving general information out, the intent would be to drum up interest, which is what advertising is designed to do. So I would say that the answer to Monique's question would be no, you can't do that.
I would agree. But again, there are properties out there where they are FSBOs for life, or they're simply not going to put it on the MLS. They have no intention when you talk about it that they're going to list the property. Within that scope, you may refer to it as an off-market property.
Yeah, that's kind of the term we're using right now.
I think we're pretty safe with off-market property because there's no indication or hint or plan to list the property because it is basically off-market. It's essentially a for sale by owner. Does that pretty much cover it? Are we good? Okay.
That pretty much covers it.
So thanks, Paul. You're welcome to stay
Cool.
and weigh in on another question that I'm going to cover real quickly, and that is something that one of our agents brought up over the weekend regarding time is of the essence contracts. And
This is a good one.
it is kind of a good one. And I pulled up actually your reply
That's a good
right
one.
there.
I'll stick around.
Okay. Jason Churiga, thank you for bringing up the question, because it is a tough question. And as some of you saw in the Facebook Connect thread, it was pretty long. The first part of it is that there was mention of a 15-day period in the contract to clear up title issues and do any repairs and that sort of thing. The famous 15-day extension.
The period. The grace period, or whatever it is.
The air quotes 15-day
Yeah.
extension period. That is only effective. That only goes into effect if the lender has given a clear to close. It does not go into effect if the lender has not been given a clear to close. So when TRID laws came along, lenders became very careful about giving clear to closes. In fact, they made sure all the title work has been done and is acceptable. They made sure that the repairs were done. And so that 15-day extension is almost moot at this point. There are very rare cases, in fact, where there is an actual 15-day extension triggered, because in almost all cases, no green light, no clear to close has been granted in order to trigger that 15-day extension. So that's item one. Be very careful of that understanding of the 15-day extension. The seller in this case had waited to the end date of the contract and now wants to put the house back on the market. And our concern, as we expressed, is that the West Michigan Regional Purchase Agreement and other purchase agreements are not time is of the essence contracts. That is, if you miss a date, it doesn't mean that the contract is over. It doesn't even mean that the seller can terminate the contract. What it means is it's suddenly gotten very gray and cloudy out. Would you agree?
Yeah.
And in this case, I think your answer was very good, because it talked about the fact that we don't have time is of the essence contracts. Even GCAR, which has the boilerplate that it is a time is of the essence contract, has been challenged legally, and per our own Gail Anderson has said that boilerplate language that tells people this is a time is of the essence contract will not hold up in court anywhere near as strongly as if you have written that language into the purchase agreement as an addition or additional provision. So, so when you get to that end date of a contract and the seller thinks, well,
deal's dead, right? Deal's dead.
Deal's dead.
Supposed to close that day by 5. Deal's dead.
Put her back on the market. Be very cautious, because that buyer, if the buyer's intent and behavior demonstrate that they have continued to work in good faith to get their mortgage approved and get to the closing table, their attorney could make a very strong case that this is not a time is of the essence contract. And if you put the house back on the market prematurely, even though it's past the deadline, you may find yourself with 2 buyers for a house, and that would put the seller in a very expensive position. So,
that's pretty much it, Don. So what we've seen over the years is that the courts will favor the home buyer because they say, was everyone working diligently? Was everyone working in good faith together to get this contract to a close?
Right.
So you hit a couple snags, hit a couple hiccups. Was it because the seller was dragging their feet? Was it because the buyer was dragging their feet? Who was the main cause of the delay? If it was a slow lender or slow title or a slow reply from Ottawa County on the water results and the well and septic results, you just don't know what it was that caused the delay, and they really are thinking, well, look, you don't get to rip this out of that buyer's hands just because that date wasn't hit. So you have to be very careful.
Yep.
Now, at the end of the day, most agents don't know this, and most buyers don't know this. Most sellers don't know all of this.
Absolutely true.
And so you might find yourself being able to renegotiate at that moment. Let's say you're the seller and you wanting to relist. Well, maybe that's an opportunity for you to make that entire EMD non-refundable. Maybe there's other things you can do to try and keep it together. But yeah, you'll see that there's a little bit of bullying that will take place in this scenario where whoever has the most knowledge will bully the other party. But those are the rules. That's how it works.
And one more thing, while we're on this topic, when you get close to that end date, it is best that you get an extension if that's the intent of both parties. I know that a lot of agents let an end date lapse, and they sort of hold hands, sing kumbaya, and kick the can down the road. And then 10 days or 2 weeks after the closing, the seller says, well, I'm done with this all. The end date was 2 weeks ago. But their behavior and their intention during the 2 weeks that the deal's been dead has indicated that they've still got their head in the game. So again, be very, very careful. If you get into that situation, your seller or your buyer may find it's best to talk with an attorney before they engage in some action to terminate the contract, because it may not be as easy to do as they think it is. So, one more quick thing. How are we doing on time?
No, 128.
128. I just want a show of hands. I want a little one of these for my marquee announcement today. I had fun with that. So anyway, that's all we got. Thank you, Paul, for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
All right, guys. See ya.